You're not really sitting in silence, not when your mind is this loud, not when your chest echoes with everything you've tried to suppress. They're gone. Yes, physically, but emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, they're more present than ever. And it's not just about them. Not really. It's what they awakened, what they touched inside you that no one else ever did. You don't miss the person as much as you miss the mirror they held up to you, the reflection of your most alive self, the version of you who dared to believe in magic, who felt desirable, worthy, chosen, and seen. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And that's what they did. They transformed you, but not in the way fairy tales teach us. This wasn't a love that healed you gently. It was the kind that shattered your illusions, cracked your foundations, and exposed the raw, unmet wounds you've carried since before you could even name them. You called it love, because that's what it felt like. Intoxicating, soul-consuming, undeniable. But what if it wasn't love? What if it was trauma disguised as passion, familiar pain, masquerading as connection? What if you didn't fall for them, but for the role they played in your inner drama? They became the stand-in for your past, the parent who didn't nurture, the friend who betrayed, the first love who abandoned. And you kept returning, again and again, not because it felt good, but because it felt known, safe in its predictability, painful, yes, but familiar pain is sometimes more comforting than unfamiliar peace. So you stayed, even as it chipped away at you. You rationalized their distance. You excused their inconsistencies. You called their silence mystery. You mistook anxiety for chemistry. And all the while, your soul whispered, "This is not love." But you couldn't hear it over the noise of your longing, your desperation to be enough for once. Because if you could make them stay, if you could make them choose you, then maybe you could finally rewrite the story of all the others who didn't. But that's not how healing works. That's not how stories end. They left, or maybe you did, but the ache stayed, the questions lingered, the what-ifs haunted. You searched for closure in texts that never came, in meanings that never existed. You replayed moments in your mind, altering the script, rewriting the ending, begging the universe to give you a different version of reality. But the truth sat quietly beneath it all. They were never meant to stay. They were meant to awaken, to unravel, to trigger, to teach. They were the spark that lit the fire, but they were never meant to be the warmth. And now, in their absence, you're left not with silence, but with space. Space to meet yourself. Not the self you were with them, not the self you pretended to be, but the you who aches beneath the performance, the you who clings to crumbs, hoping they'll taste like a feast, the you who has spent a lifetime negotiating your worth. And this is where the real work begins. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole, by integrating every part of ourselves, even the ones we hide. And now, you're being asked to integrate the grief, the shame, the desperation, the unworthiness. You're being asked to face the shadow they stirred, to hold the ache without trying to numb it, to sit with the emptiness, without trying to fill it with their memory. Because healing isn't glamorous. It's not soft music and warm baths. It's screaming into pillows. It's nights where you question your value. It's facing the reality that some people will never say sorry, will never understand the damage they did, and yet, you heal anyway. You choose yourself anyway. You learn to stop romanticizing chaos. You learn that love should feel like safety, not survival. That presence matters more than potential. That someone who triggers all your wounds is not your soulmate. They're your mirror. And sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is stop chasing people who only know how to run. You begin to reclaim yourself, slowly, gently, fiercely. You unlearn the belief that love must be earned. You silence the voice that says you are too much or not enough. You stop performing and start breathing. You look in the mirror and meet your own gaze, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Who are you without their gaze, without their validation, without their approval? You are still here, still breathing, still worthy. And that is where power is born, not in getting them back, but in getting yourself back, in rebuilding a life that doesn't need their presence to feel complete, in becoming someone so rooted, so whole, that their absence becomes irrelevant, not because they didn't matter, but because you matter more. And yes, you'll still think of them, you'll hear their name, and feel that familiar pang, but it will pass, and one day, their memory won't sting. It'll just be a story, a chapter, a lesson in a much bigger book. And you, my love, are the author now. You thought the hardest part was when they left, but it wasn't. The hardest part came later, when the silence set in, when the days kept passing, and they didn't come back, when the world expected you to have moved on, to be fine, to smile, and post and laugh, like your heart hadn't been ripped out in the quietest way possible. You wore masks so well no one knew you were still bleeding, and maybe part of you preferred it that way, because if no one saw it, then maybe you didn't have to feel it so deeply either. But late at night, when everything calmed and nothing distracted you from yourself, the ache came back, like clockwork, not sharp and sudden, but slow and suffocating. You told yourself you were over it, but grief doesn't listen to timelines. It has no expiration date. It shows up in whispers, when your favorite song plays, when someone laughs like they used to, when you pass the place where they once held your hand like you were the only thing keeping them grounded. You wonder if they ever felt what you felt, if they ever lie awake wondering if they made a mistake, if they ever revisit your name in their head, like a prayer they stopped believing in. But you'll never know, and that's the part you hate the most, not that they left, but that they left questions, unfinished sentences, unanswered calls, that they walked away holding all the closure like it was theirs to keep. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." And that's what this is. It's not just heartbreak, it's loneliness. The kind that comes when someone saw your soul and still chose to leave. The kind that makes you doubt your ability to be truly known, truly loved, truly kept. You try to distract yourself, to pretend you've moved on. Maybe you even date someone new, hoping to silence the memory with someone else's laughter. But your heart knows the truth. Healing isn't found in replacement, it's found in return. A return to self, a return to the parts of you that you abandoned just to be loved. You begin to see how you shrank around them, how you silenced your voice, compromised your values, tolerated confusion just for scraps of attention. You thought love meant patience, endurance, loyalty. And yes, love is all those things, but love is also clarity, consistency, effort, safety. And if it lacks those things, it's not love, it's attachment, addiction, projection. You loved them deeply, but not cleanly. You loved them like a wound loves a blade. Familiar pain is easier than unfamiliar peace. You tell yourself they'll come back, that if you heal enough, change enough, become more of what they wanted, they'll return. But that's not healing. That's performance, and you've performed long enough. You've twisted, bent, broken, just to be chosen, but now you're done. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much to keep abandoning yourself for people who never asked you to stay whole. You start to reintroduce yourself to the parts of you they never knew. The messy parts, the quiet rage, the soft poetry, the unspoken dreams. You allow yourself to exist fully again, not just as a version curated to be kept. You learn how to sit in your own silence and feel peace instead of panic. You learn to trust your own voice without needing it echoed back for validation. You start showing up for yourself in ways they never did. You become the consistency they lacked, the warmth they withheld, the apology they never gave. And slowly, something shifts. You don't forget them, but they stop holding power over you. Their memory becomes less of a wound and more of a window, one that showed you where you were unhealed.
one that cracked you open so the light could finally get in. Xiang said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and maybe, just maybe, that's the gift they unknowingly gave you. Not love but liberation. They came to burn down the parts of you that weren't built on truth, that now you rise from the ashes, not bitter, but brighter, not harder, but wiser, not closed but discerning. You will love again, yes, but not from a place of hunger, not from an ache that says please complete me. No, you will love from overflow, from fullness, from the stillness that comes when you know who you are. And when someone next holds your heart, they'll meet someone whole, someone who doesn't beg to be chosen because she already chose herself. And that kind of woman, she's unforgettable, not because of how she bends but because of how she stands. And you, my love, are standing now. Taller, stronger, softer, freer. There's a strange moment in the healing process that no one talks about, when you realize you don't want them back anymore, not because the love wasn't real, but because you finally become someone they no longer fit beside. At first, that realization feels like betrayal, like you're turning your back on the only version of love you ever fully gave yourself to. But then something deeper speaks inside you, not from anger, but from truth. That version of love was built from hunger, from emptiness, from trying to prove to yourself that you were worthy by being worthy to them. But now your worth no longer hangs in someone else's hands. You're no longer performing for applause that never came. You no longer need to be someone's favorite story when you've learned to be your own sanctuary. Carl Jung said, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. And now you are waking up from the fantasy that love should always be dramatic, painful, consuming. Waking up from the belief that your role is to fix, to heal, to earn affection by being everything they need, while you slowly disappear. You've learned that love that asks you to betray yourself is not love, it's self-abandonment, and you're done abandoning yourself. You've spent nights tracing their silence like it was a secret map, trying to find the treasure of closure hidden in their absence. But now you understand, closure isn't a door they open for you. It's one you build with your own hands. It's when you stop rereading the same page, hoping the ending will change. It's when you stop waiting for the apology that never came, and decide to forgive yourself instead, for staying too long, for giving too much, for making excuses for someone who never chose you with clarity. You begin to see how you loved from your wounds, not your wholeness, how you tried to rescue them, hoping they'd see your worth if you carried their pain long enough. But you were never meant to bleed yourself dry just to feel needed. You were meant to bloom, to rise, to heal. And healing isn't a destination, it's a constant return to yourself, to the parts of you that love softly, that feel deeply, that hope loudly. You feared becoming cold, didn't you? That if you let go of the pain, you'd let go of your depth. But healing didn't make you colder, it made you cleaner, sharper, quieter, stronger, more aligned. And now you don't chase peace, it finds you. In the way you speak more gently to yourself, in the way you walk away from what no longer aligns, even if it once felt like home, in the way you no longer beg to be seen, because you see yourself so clearly now. They were a chapter, loud, consuming, unforgettable, but that chapter is closed, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, not because they meant nothing, but because you finally mean everything to yourself. You are not broken because they couldn't love you. You are not unlovable because they left. Sometimes people can't meet us where we are because they haven't yet arrived at themselves. Sometimes their love is real, but too wounded to be whole. Sometimes it's not about you at all. And sometimes the most painful truths become the most freeing, because now you are free. Free from the loop, free from the waiting, free from the illusion that love must be earned through suffering. You no longer romanticize chaos. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You've stopped watering dead plants, stopped knocking on locked doors, stopped begging fate to give you back what you now realize was never truly yours. And still on some nights, you remember them. not in longing, not in pain, but in quiet reverence. They were the storm that broke you open, but you were the light that poured through the cracks. You didn't just survive them, you survived the version of yourself who believed she needed them to feel whole. And that is where your power lives now, in the space they once occupied, which you filled with your own voice, your own warmth, your own love. And the next time love finds you, and it won't arrive as a test. It won't ask you to prove your worth. It will recognize your light, not try to dim it. It will feel like stillness after a lifetime of storms. It will feel like home, not in another person, but in your own skin. Because now you are no longer searching. You are remembering that everything you ever needed was always inside you. There's a kind of peace that doesn't arrive with fireworks or applause. It arrives quietly, like the soft exhale after holding your breath for too long, like the moment you realize you haven't thought about them in days, and the world didn't fall apart. It arrives when you wake up and no longer reach for your phone to check if they remembered you. It arrives when your smile isn't forced, when laughter returns, not as a mask but as a melody you forgot how to sing. That's when you know you're healing. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've forgiven, not them yourself. For all the times you loved from scarcity, for the moments you begged for breadcrumbs and called it a feast, for the years you mistook anxiety for affection, confusion for chemistry, and silence for depth. You see now how much of your heart you handed over without even asking if they had the hands to hold it. You weren't weak, you were sincere. And there is no shame in that. You gave love that was honest in a world that often offers games and half-hearted attempts. And now, as the dust settles, you realize they didn't reject you. They reflected you. The parts of you still aching for approval, the wounds still longing for validation, the pain you tried to hide behind achievements, behind smiles, behind pretending it didn't hurt when it always did. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the unconscious parts of us that shape our behavior until we make them conscious. They were your shadow, the embodiment of everything you had yet to confront, and their presence was never the lesson. It was what they stirred that held the real message, that you are not too much, that your sensitivity is not a weakness, that the way you love with depth, with loyalty, with reverence, is not a flaw. It's a gift, one that simply landed in unready hands, and now you reclaim it. You no longer feel the urge to prove your worth in places that cannot see it. You no longer explain your soul in languages they never tried to learn. You have nothing left to prove, because you finally believe it. You are enough, without them, without the apology, without the validation, without the fairy tale ending you used to fantasize about at 2 a.m. while trying to hold yourself together. You are no longer waiting for someone to return. You are welcoming yourself home. And what a home it is, strong, sacred, soft and steady, built from tears you no longer hide, forged in fires that no longer burn you, decorated with memories you've made all on your own. Now when love arrives, and it won't demand your silence. It won't make you chase or shrink or settle. It will sit beside you in peace, in presence, in partnership. It will honor the journey you took to meet yourself. It will hold you not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a soul to be seen. And until then, you are not lacking. You are not half. You are not empty. You are whole. You always were. You just forgot. You just confused being needed with being loved. You just mistook attention for affection. You just believed that breaking yourself into pieces would make someone want to stay. But now you stay with yourself. You offer presence where you used to offer performance. You offer truth where you used to offer silence. You offer love not as a bargaining chip, but as a birthright. And in doing so, you become the thing you've always searched for. Not a perfect person, but a peaceful one. Someone who knows that love isn't about being chosen by someone else. It's about choosing yourself every single day. It's about trusting your own voice more than the echo of someone who left. It's about building a life that doesn't revolve around whether someone stays, but around how deeply you show up for yourself. So if they ever think of you, and they will, they'll remember the depth, the loyalty, the way you loved without hesitation. But they'll also know that what they lost is no longer waiting, that you didn't turn cold, you turned inward, that your love didn't die. It returned home, to the one place it always belonged, to you.